The girl sat on the worn wooden bench in front of the community center, her violin case open at her feet, catching the afternoon light that filtered through the maple trees. She was 12 years old, thin and pale, with dark sunglasses that covered eyes that had never seen color or shape or the faces of the people who passed by. Her name was Lily Chan, and she played her violin every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, not for the coins that occasionally clinked into her case, but because music was the only language that made sense of a world she could only touch and hear and feel. The bow moved across the strings with a precision that seemed impossible for someone who couldn't see the instrument she held. The melody was something classical, something old and beautiful that spoke of longing and hope in equal measure. Most people walked past without stopping. Some paused for a moment, appreciated the music, then continued on their way. A few dropped bills into her case, their footsteps fading before she could say thank you. She'd been playing for about 40 minutes when she heard the motorcycle. The sound was different from the cars and buses that usually passed. Deeper, more powerful. It grew louder, then cut off abruptly as the engine died somewhere close. Lily kept playing, her fingers finding notes by muscle memory and feel, the calluses on her fingertips pressing against strings she'd touched 10,000 times before. Heavy footsteps approached on the concrete. Boots, by the sound of them. They stopped a few feet away. Lily finished the phrase she was playing, brought the piece to its natural conclusion, then lowered her bow. "That was beautiful," a man's voice said. Rough and worn, like gravel under tires, but not unkind. "Thank you." Lily's voice was soft, practiced at responding to compliments from strangers. "How long have you been playing?" "Since I was 5. 7 years now." "You're good. Better than good." A pause. "Can you see?" Most people danced around the question or didn't ask at all. The directness surprised her. "No, I was born blind. And you play like that without seeing?" There was something in his voice. Not pity, but genuine amazement. "That's remarkable. I hear the music differently than people who can see. I feel it." She tilted her head toward where his voice came from. "What's your name?" "Jack. Jack Reeves." Another pause. "I ride with a motorcycle club, the Steel Brotherhood. We were passing through town, and I heard you playing from the street. Had to stop. I'm Lily. What you're playing, is it hard?" "It's Vivaldi. The Four Seasons. Winter Movement. It's technically challenging, but I've practiced it so many times that my fingers know where to go without me thinking about it." She ran her thumb along the violin's neck, feeling the smooth wood. "Music is math and emotion combined. I can't see the sheet music, but I can feel the patterns. The way notes relate to each other. The spaces between sounds." Jack was quiet for a moment. Then, "Can I ask you something? Why do you play out here instead of, I don't know, concert halls or something? You're good enough." Lily smiled, a small sad curve of her lips. "Concert halls require things I don't have. Training at expensive conservatories. Connections. Money for the right teachers. I take lessons twice a month from Mrs. Patterson at the community center when she has time. The rest I teach myself by listening to recordings and practicing. That doesn't seem fair." "Fair doesn't really factor into much, I've learned." She set her violin back in position, ready to play again. "But this is nice too. Playing for people who happen to pass by. Sometimes that feels more honest than performing for people who paid to hear you. Play something else for me, please." Lily lifted her bow and began a new piece. This one was different from the Vivaldi, more personal. A melody she'd composed herself over weeks and months of experimentation, finding notes that captured the feeling of wind on her face and the warmth of sun and the sound of her mother's laughter. She played for 15 minutes while Jack listened in silence, and when she finished, she heard him breathe out slowly, like he'd been holding something in. "That was yours," he said. "Not a question. How did you know?" It felt different. Less formal. More true. His boots scraped against concrete as he shifted his weight. "Lily, I want to do something for you. My club, we do charity work. Help people who need it. Would you let us help you?" Lily's grip tightened on her violin's neck. "I don't need charity. Not charity. Support. There's a difference." His voice was gentle now. "You've got a gift. A real one. But you're playing on a street corner when you should be playing in places where the right people can hear you. Let us give you that chance. I don't even know you. I know. But I know talent when I hear it. And I know injustice when I see it. A kid like you shouldn't have to struggle just because the world isn't set up right." He paused. "I'm going to give you my number. You talk to your parents. If they say yes, you call me. We'll figure something out. Okay. Lily heard him tear paper, the scratch of pen on notebook. He pressed something into her hand. A business card, rough-edged, with embossed lettering she could feel under her fingertips. You don't have to decide now. Just think about it. His boots moved away, stopped. For what it's worth, Lily, I think you're going to do great things. With or without help. But everyone deserves a fair shot. The motorcycle engine roared to life, then faded down the street. Lily sat alone again, the card in one hand, her violin in the other, trying to understand what had just happened. That evening, she told her parents about Jack. Her father, Thomas, was skeptical. Her mother, Wei, was cautious but curious. They'd struggled to provide for Lily and her younger brother on two modest incomes, and the specialized care Lily needed, the mobility training and the braille materials and the endless medical appointments, had drained their savings years ago. The violin lessons from Mrs. Patterson were a luxury they could barely afford. A motorcycle club wants to help you? Thomas's voice carried doubt. Lily, that sounds suspicious. He didn't ask for anything, just gave me his number and said to call if we wanted help. Lily ran her fingers over the embossed card again. He seemed genuine. Wei took the card from her daughter's hand. Steel Brotherhood Motorcycle Club. Phoenix Chapter. There's a phone number. She was quiet for a moment. I'll call Mrs. Patterson. See if she knows anything about them. Mrs. Patterson, it turned out, knew quite a bit. The Steel Brotherhood had been in Phoenix for 20 years, and while they had the leather vests and the loud bikes that made people nervous, they also ran a youth center, organized toy drives at Christmas, and had helped rebuild homes after a wildfire 2 years prior. They had a reputation for being protective of their community, especially of people who couldn't protect themselves. If Jack Reeves reached out to Lily, he means it, Mrs. Patterson said over the phone while Lily listened to her mother's side of the conversation. He's their road captain. Good man. Lost his daughter in a car accident 10 years ago. She was a musician too, apparently. Piano. He's been supporting young musicians ever since. Wei relayed this to Thomas after she hung up. They discussed it in low voices while Lily pretended not to listen from the living room, her fingers running scales on her violin, the notes soft so they wouldn't disturb her brother's homework. Finally, Thomas called her in. If you want to call him, you can. But your mother and I will be part of every conversation. And if anything feels wrong, we stop. Understood? Lily nodded, relief and anxiety tangling in her chest. The next day, Wei called the number on the card. Jack answered on the second ring. He explained his idea clearly and without pressure. The Steel Brotherhood wanted to fund Lily's music education. Real lessons with a professional instructor. An upgraded instrument when she was ready for one. And if she progressed enough, they'd help her apply to music programs and conservatories, places where her talent could be properly developed. What do you want in return? Wei asked, her voice careful. Nothing. This is what we do. We find people with potential who aren't getting fair opportunities, and we level the playing field. Jack's voice came through the speakerphone, filling the kitchen where the family sat. Lily's got something special. She shouldn't have to give that up because she was born into circumstances that make things harder. Why her specifically? My daughter played piano. She died before she could pursue it seriously. I can't bring her back, but I can help other young musicians get the chances she never got. Lily's one of them. The silence stretched. Then Thomas spoke. If we agree, we want regular updates. Complete transparency about where money goes. And Lily gets final say on everything. This is her life and her music. Agreed. I wouldn't have it any other way. 2 weeks later, Lily had her first lesson with Marcus Bradley, a violin instructor who'd performed with symphonies across the country before retiring to teach. He drove to her house 3 times a week, carrying an expertise that transformed her playing from talented to exceptional. He taught her advanced techniques, helped her refine her tone, introduced her to repertoire she'd never encountered. You have an extraordinary ear, Marcus told her after their 5th lesson. Most students take years to develop the pitch sensitivity you already have. Your blindness isn't a limitation in music. It's an advantage. The lessons changed everything. Lily's confidence grew. Her playing deepened. She began composing more of her own pieces, working out melodies and harmonies that captured feelings she couldn't express in words. And Jack checked in regularly, calling every few weeks to hear how things were progressing. Never intrusive, but always interested. 6 months into the lessons, Marcus told Lily about a youth competition in Los Angeles. The National Young Musicians Showcase. Winners received scholarships and performance opportunities. You should enter, he said. You're ready. Lily wasn't sure. Competitions meant pressure and judgment and potential failure. But her parents encouraged her, and Jack, when she called to tell him about it, was enthusiastic. This is what we've been working toward, he said. A chance to show what you can do on a bigger stage. You've got this, Lily. The application required a recorded audition. Marcus helped her prepare, and they spent 3 weeks perfecting her pieces. When they finally recorded her performance in the community center's small auditorium, Lily played with everything she had, pouring months of practice and years of passion into 20 minutes of music. 2 months later, the acceptance letter arrived. She'd made it to the final round. 15 young musicians from across the country, competing in Los Angeles on a Saturday in March. Jack called the day after they received the news. Congratulations. I knew you'd make it. Thank you. For everything. The lessons, the support, all of it. I wouldn't be here without you. You'd have gotten here eventually. We just helped speed things up. A pause. Listen, some of the club members want to come watch you compete. Show support. Would that be okay? Lily smiled. I'd like that. How many can we bring? Just so I know. I don't know. How many want to come? Jack laughed. More than you'd expect. Let me work out logistics. We'll be there. The competition was held at a performing arts center in downtown Los Angeles, a beautiful venue with perfect acoustics and seats for 800 people. Lily's parents drove her out the day before, and she spent the evening in their hotel room practicing, her fingers moving across strings by feel, her mind going over every note of the pieces she'd prepared. The morning of the competition, she was scheduled to perform third. She waited backstage with her parents, her violin case in her lap, trying to calm her breathing. The first performer was a pianist from New York, technically perfect, but somehow cold. The second was a cellist from Chicago. Beautiful tone, though he rushed some passages. Then it was Lily's turn. Her mother guided her to the stage entrance, and Lily walked out alone, her cane tapping softly, finding the center mark where she was supposed to stand. The audience was quiet. She could feel their attention, hundreds of eyes on her, waiting. She positioned her violin, tested the tuning with soft plucked strings, then raised her bow. The first piece was the Vivaldi she'd been playing when she met Jack. Winter. She knew every note, every dynamic, every moment where the music swelled or whispered. She played it not as a performance, but as a conversation, telling a story about cold and struggle and the hope of spring beneath frozen ground. When she finished, applause filled the auditorium. Genuine, warm, appreciative. But she wasn't done. The second piece was her own composition, the one she'd played for Jack that first day. She'd refined it since then, added complexity and depth, but the heart of it remained the same. A melody about finding beauty in a world you couldn't see, about the way sound could paint pictures more vivid than light ever could. She played with her eyes closed behind her dark sunglasses, lost in the music, feeling every note resonate not just in the violin, but in her chest, her bones, her breath. Time stopped existing. There was only the bow and the strings and the melody that connected her to something larger than herself. The final note hung in the air, then faded. The silence lasted 3 seconds. Then the applause began. But it wasn't just applause. It was something bigger. People were standing. She could hear it in the way the sound changed, became fuller. Her mother later told her that the entire audience had risen to their feet, that some people were crying, that the judges looked stunned. But what Lily heard in that moment was something else entirely. Beneath the applause, growing louder, was the sound of motorcycle engines. Not inside the auditorium. Outside. In the street. Dozens of them, maybe more, all revving in unison, creating a thunderous harmony that vibrated through the building's walls. The applause faded as people registered this new sound, confused and amazed in equal measure. Lily stood on stage, her violin at her side, listening to the engine's roar. She understood before anyone explained. Jack had brought the club, not just a few members. All of them. The judges announced a brief recess, and Lily's mother guided her off stage and out the front entrance of the Performing Arts Center. The street had been closed to traffic, and filling it completely was a sight that would be photographed and shared and remembered for years. 200 motorcycles, maybe more, arranged in neat rows, each one piloted by someone wearing the Steel Brotherhood vest. They'd coordinated their arrival to coincide with the end of her performance, and now they sat on their bikes, engines idling, waiting. Jack dismounted from the front bike and walked over. "You were phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. You brought everyone." Lily's voice was thick with emotion. "I put out the word. Told them about you. About your talent and your determination. About how you deserved people showing up for you the way you show up for your music." He paused. "They wanted to come. All of them. Some drove 5 hours to be here. The other competitors and their families had come outside, drawn by the noise. Judges. Audience members. Everyone staring at this impossible gathering of bikers who'd shown up to support a 12-year-old blind violinist they'd never met." Jack raised his hand, and the engines cut off in sequence, leaving ringing silence. Then he spoke, his voice carrying across the crowd. "This is Lily Chun. She's been playing violin since she was 5 years old. She's blind, which means she's working twice as hard as everyone else to be here. And she just gave one of the most beautiful performances I've ever heard. We came to make sure she knows she's not alone, that she's got 200 brothers and sisters backing her up." One of the bikers, a woman with silver hair and a weathered face, started a slow clap. Others joined. Soon all 200 were clapping in rhythm, a percussion that matched the beat of the engines that had roared moments before. Lily stood in front of the Performing Arts Center, her violin case in her hand, her parents beside her, and felt the weight of this moment settle into her bones. She'd spent her whole life navigating a world designed for people who could see, fighting for every opportunity, proving herself over and over. And here, now, were 200 people who'd come just to say, "We see you, even if you can't see us." Jack put a hand on her shoulder. "Win or lose today, you've already accomplished something most musicians never do. You've touched people, made them feel something real. That's what matters." The judges reconvened the competition after 30 minutes. The remaining 12 performers played their pieces, all of them talented, all of them impressive. But none of them had 200 motorcycles roaring approval outside. When the results were announced 2 hours later, Lily took second place. The winner was a 17-year-old violinist from San Francisco who'd been playing concertos since he was 7 and had every advantage wealth and opportunity could provide. He was brilliant, deserving. But as Lily stood on stage receiving her medal, as the audience applauded and photographers snapped pictures, she knew she'd won something more important than first place. She'd found a family she didn't know she needed. People who believed in her not out of obligation, but out of genuine respect for who she was and what she'd accomplished. After the ceremony, Jack gathered the Steel Brotherhood in the parking lot. "You all saw what happened today. That girl has a gift, and she's going to go far. But she's going to face obstacles most of us can't imagine. I want to make sure she's got support for as long as she needs it. Not just financially, but emotionally. She needs to know there are people in her corner." A man named Raphael, the club's vice president, spoke up. "What are you proposing?" "I want to create a scholarship fund. Not just for Lily, but for other young musicians who need help. Kids with talent, but no resources. We call it the Sarah Reeves Memorial Scholarship, after my daughter." Jack's voice roughened. "We couldn't save Sarah, but we can give other kids the chances she never got." Starting with Lily. The vote was unanimous. Over the next 4 years, the scholarship fund grew. The Steel Brotherhood held fundraisers, charity concerts, poker runs where hundreds of bikers paid entry fees that went directly to supporting young musicians. They helped 12 students in the first year alone. By year 4, they'd supported nearly 50. But Lily remained their flagship story. The blind girl who'd played violin on a street corner and caught the attention of a biker who'd lost his daughter. Local news picked up the story, then regional outlets. Eventually, a documentary filmmaker spent 6 months following Lily and the Steel Brotherhood, capturing the unlikely partnership that had transformed both. Lily continued her education with Marcus, and at 16, she was accepted to the prestigious San Francisco Conservatory of Music. Full scholarship, thanks in part to the Steel Brotherhood's advocacy and the recordings of her performances that Jack had carefully compiled and submitted to admissions committees. The day before she left for San Francisco, the Steel Brotherhood threw her a going-away party at their clubhouse. 200 people showed up, not all of them bikers. Mrs. Patterson was there. Marcus, teachers from Lily's school, neighbors who'd watched her grow up. They filled the space with noise and laughter and the kind of affection that felt like roots, like belonging. Jack gave a speech. 4 years ago, I heard a girl playing violin outside a community center and stopped to listen. That decision changed my life. Gave me purpose I'd been missing since Sarah died. Lily, you've taught us that family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up, supporting each other, believing in potential even when the world says it's not worth the investment. He handed her a gift. A violin case, high-quality leather, with a brass plate engraved with her name. Inside was a violin that made her breath catch when she lifted it. Professional grade. Handcrafted. The kind of instrument she'd dreamed of owning but never thought she'd touch. This is from all of us, Jack said. You've earned it 1,000 times over. Now go to San Francisco and show them what we already know. That you're one of the best. Lily couldn't speak. She ran her fingers over the violin's wood, feeling the grain, the perfect weight, the way it seemed to hum with potential even when silent. Finally, she managed, thank you, all of you, for seeing something in me I didn't always see in myself. Raphael spoke up from the back. You going to play us something before you leave? Lily smiled. I think I can do that. She took out the new violin, tuned it carefully, then played. Not a classical piece or one of her compositions, but something she'd been working on specifically for this moment. A melody that incorporated the rumble of motorcycle engines, the rhythm of boots on pavement, the harmony of 200 people who'd chosen to care about a blind girl with a violin. She played for 20 minutes, and when she finished, the clubhouse was silent except for the sound of people trying not to cry. Then the applause began, joined by the revving of engines outside, bikers who'd gone to their motorcycles to add their mechanical voices to the tribute. At the conservatory, Lily thrived. She studied under masters, performed in recitals, composed pieces that were selected for showcases. She made friends, other musicians who appreciated her talent without treating her blindness as a novelty or a limitation. And every few weeks, Jack called to check in, to hear how she was doing, to remind her that she had people back in Phoenix who were proud of her. In her second year, she was selected to perform a solo concert at the conservatory's main hall. She chose pieces carefully, a mix of classical repertoire and her own compositions. And she sent an invitation to Jack with a simple note. Come if you can. I owe this to you. Jack didn't just come. He brought 50 Steel Brotherhood members, filling 2 rows of the concert hall with leather vests and the kind of presents that made other attendees do double takes. They sat respectfully, silent during the performance, erupting into applause after each piece. Lily played the best concert of her life that night. Every note was exactly where it should be, every emotion precisely calibrated. When she finished her final piece, her own composition about finding family in unexpected places, the standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. After the concert, during the reception, Jack found her in the crowded lobby. You were magnificent. Truly. I had a lot of help getting here. You did the work, Lily. We just opened doors. You walked through them. A woman approached, introducing herself as a representative from a recording label that specialized in classical music. She wanted to discuss a recording contract, a debut album of Lily's original compositions. Your work is unlike anything I've heard. The way you blend classical technique with contemporary sensibility. It's remarkable. Lily felt dizzy. Are you serious? Completely. Call my office next week. Let's talk details. After the woman left, Lily turned to where she'd last heard Jack's voice. Did that really just happen? It did. And it's just the beginning. She could hear the smile in his voice. You're going to be famous, Lily. And you're going to deserve every bit of it. The recording contract led to an album that was released when Lily was 19. Critics praised it. Classical music enthusiasts discovered it. But what surprised everyone was how it crossed over to mainstream audiences. People who didn't typically listen to violin music, but found something compelling in Lily's compositions and her story. She gave interviews, talking about her blindness not as something she'd overcome, but as a different way of experiencing the world. I don't see music as sheets of paper with notes on them, she told one interviewer. I see it as architecture made of sound, as emotion given structure. My blindness doesn't limit my music. It shapes it in ways that make it uniquely mine. The documentary about her and the Steel Brotherhood premiered at film festivals, won awards, got picked up by a streaming service. Suddenly, millions of people knew the story of the blind girl and the motorcycle club that had believed in her. Donations to the Sarah Reeves Memorial Scholarship Fund exploded. They were able to help hundreds of young musicians, providing instruments, lessons, and opportunities to kids who'd never had access before. Other motorcycle clubs started similar programs, inspired by what the Steel Brotherhood had built. Through it all, Lily remained grounded. She visited Phoenix regularly, played free concerts at the community center where she'd started, mentored young musicians through the scholarship program. And she stayed in close contact with Jack, who'd become the closest thing to a grandfather she'd ever known. On the 5th anniversary of her first competition, the Steel Brotherhood organized a special event. A concert in Phoenix's largest venue, with Lily as the featured performer. Tickets sold out in hours, proceeds going to the scholarship fund. The audience was a mix of classical music lovers, documentary fans, and hundreds of bikers who'd followed Lily's journey from the beginning. Before the concert started, Lily stood backstage with Jack. "I'm nervous," she admitted. "This feels bigger than anything I've done before." "It is bigger, but you're ready. You've been ready since the day I heard you playing outside that community center." He paused. "Sarah would have loved you. The two of you would have been great friends. I wish I could have met her. In a way, you did. She's part of the reason I stopped that day. Part of the reason I couldn't walk past without helping. Her memory pushed me to be better, to do something meaningful with my grief." His voice was thick. "You gave me a way to honor her. That's a gift I can never repay. You've already repaid it 1,000 times over." The concert was everything Lily hoped it would be. She played pieces from her album, classical works she loved, and premieres of new compositions. But the finale was something special, something she'd planned specifically for this night. She invited Jack on stage, asked him to tell the story of how they'd met, how a chance encounter had changed both their lives. He spoke haltingly at first, and used to public speaking, but his sincerity resonated through the hall. When he finished, Lily played a piece she'd composed for him, a melody that captured grief and hope and the way love persisted even after loss. As the final note faded, she spoke into the microphone. "5 years ago, I was playing violin on a street corner, hoping to earn a few dollars. A biker stopped to listen, and that moment changed everything. But it wasn't just about music or scholarships or opportunities. It was about someone seeing my potential when I couldn't see it myself. About a family forming around shared values of support and belief and showing up for each other." She paused, listening to the complete silence in the venue. "I want everyone who's helped me, every member of the Steel Brotherhood who's supported the scholarship fund, to stand up." Throughout the venue, people rose. Not just the 50 who'd come from Phoenix, but bikers from other chapters who'd traveled to be there. Over 200 people standing in a concert hall, their leather vests marking them as family. Lily raised her bow. "This is for all of you, for believing in me and in every young musician who's come after." She began to play, and as she did, something extraordinary happened. The bikers in the audience, coordinated beforehand, pulled out their keys and began to rev them, creating a rumbling harmony beneath her violin's melody. It shouldn't have worked, the combination of classical instrument and motorcycle engine sounds, but somehow it did. The two elements wove together, creating something new and unexpected and profoundly moving. The audience member who wasn't part of the Steel Brotherhood sat stunned, witnessing this fusion of worlds that shouldn't mix but somehow did, perfectly. When the piece ended, the standing ovation lasted 10 minutes, people on their feet, applauding and crying and understanding that they'd witnessed something more than a concert. They'd witnessed the power of community, of unlikely connections, of people choosing to lift each other up instead of walking past. After the concert, as Lily packed her violin in the case Jack had given her years ago, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From a blind girl with a dream to a professional musician with a platform. From playing on street corners to performing in concert halls. From struggling alone to being surrounded by hundreds of people who considered her family. Jack found her in the green room. "How do you feel?" "Grateful. Overwhelmed. Like I'm living someone else's life, except it's mine." She closed the violin case, her fingers running over the brass plate with her engraved name. "I keep thinking about how different things would be if you'd driven past that day. If you hadn't stopped. I think you'd have made it anyway. Maybe taken longer, maybe been harder, but you'd have gotten there. Your talent is too big to stay hidden. Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to do it alone. None of us should have to do things alone. That's the lesson, isn't it? That we're stronger together. That stopping to help someone isn't weakness or charity, It's what makes us human. 10 years after that first meeting on the street corner, Lily Chun was 22 years old and one of the most recognized young violinists in the country. She'd performed with orchestras, recorded 3 albums, composed pieces that were played by musicians worldwide. The documentary about her story had won an Emmy. The scholarship fund named after Sarah Reeves had helped nearly 1,000 young musicians. But what mattered most to Lily wasn't the accolades or the recognition. It was the knowledge that she'd been seen, that a man who'd lost his daughter had recognized something in a blind girl playing violin and had chosen to help instead of walking past. That choice had rippled outward, touching thousands of lives, creating opportunities that wouldn't have existed otherwise. She thought about this often when she mentored young musicians through the scholarship program, when she listened to their stories of struggle and determination. She tried to offer them what Jack had offered her: belief, resources, and the understanding that they deserved support not because they'd earned it through suffering, but because they were human beings with potential. On the 10-year anniversary of their meeting, Lily organized a special concert in Phoenix. Not in a major venue, but outside the community center where Jack had first heard her play. They set up a small stage, brought in professional sound equipment, and invited everyone who'd been part of her journey. Jack sat in the front row, older now, his beard completely gray, his movements slower, but his eyes still sharp. Around him sat 200 Steel Brotherhood members, the scholarship fund's board of directors, young musicians who'd been helped by the program, and community members who'd watched Lily grow from a struggling girl to an accomplished artist. Lily played the same pieces she'd played that first day, the Vivaldi, her own composition about finding beauty in darkness. But she played them differently now, with the weight of experience and the depth that came from understanding what those pieces had set in motion. When she finished, she set down her violin and spoke. 10 years ago, I sat on a bench right over there, playing for whoever would listen. I was 12 years old, blind, and convinced that my dream of being a real musician was just that, a dream. Then a man stopped his motorcycle and listened. Really listened. And that changed everything. She turned toward Jack. You gave me more than lessons and opportunities. You gave me a family, a community that showed up for me when I needed it most and continues to show up for young musicians who need it now. You taught me that talent matters, but so does support, that no one succeeds alone, that the measure of a person isn't just what they achieve, but how they help others achieve their own dreams. The crowd applauded, but Lily wasn't finished. I've been working on something special, a composition that tells the story of these 10 years, of a blind girl and a biker and a family that formed around music and motorcycles. It's called 200 Engines, and this is its premiere. She lifted her violin and began to play. The piece was her most ambitious yet, incorporating elements of all the music she'd explored over the decade. Classical foundations with contemporary flourishes, moments of quiet introspection and passages of triumphant celebration. And woven throughout, the rhythmic pulse of motorcycle engines, a reminder of the family that had surrounded her with their mechanical thunder. As she reached the climax, 200 motorcycles parked around the community center started their engines. The bikers had been waiting for this moment, and they revved in perfect harmony with her playing, creating a symphony of violin and engines that shouldn't work but absolutely did. The sound washed over the crowd, overwhelming and beautiful and unlike anything anyone had heard before. It was classical music and biker culture fused into something entirely new, a celebration of unlikely connections and the power of people choosing to care about each other. When the final note faded and the engines cut off, the silence felt sacred. Then the applause began, mixed with the sound of people crying, overwhelmed by what they'd witnessed. Jack stood slowly and walked to the stage. Lily set down her violin and embraced him, this man who'd become her mentor and protector and friend. They held each other while 200 people who'd become family watched and understood that this was what mattered. Not fame or recognition or awards, but human connection. People showing up for each other. Love expressed through action and support and belief. Later, as the sun set and the crowd began to disperse, Lily sat on the same bench where she'd sat 10 years ago. Her parents were talking to Jack nearby. Young musicians from the scholarship program were asking Marcus questions about technique. Steel Brotherhood members were loading equipment, making sure everything was packed safely. Lily felt the rough wood of the bench under her hands, heard the familiar sounds of the street, smelled the autumn air that carried the first hints of approaching winter. She'd traveled the world, played in prestigious venues, achieved things she'd only dreamed of a decade ago. But this spot, this bench, this moment, this was where it had all begun. Where a blind girl with a violin had played her heart out for anyone who'd listen. Where a biker had stopped and seen potential instead of limitation. Where a family had formed around the simple idea that everyone deserved support and belief and the chance to become who they were meant to be. The story that had started here had rippled outward, touching thousands of lives, creating opportunities, building community. And it continued still, evolving and growing, reaching people Lily would never meet, but who'd be affected by the scholarship fund, by the documentary, by the example of what happened when people chose compassion over indifference. She picked up her violin one more time and played softly, just for herself. A simple melody, the first one she'd ever learned when she was 5 years old, and just beginning to understand that music could be a language that transcended sight. In the distance, a motorcycle engine rumbled to life, joined by another, then another. 200 engines creating a chorus that harmonized with her violin, a reminder that she'd never play alone again, that she had a family, that she'd been seen, and in being seen, had learned to help others see themselves. And that was worth more than any concert hall or recording contract could ever be. The blind girl who'd played for a biker had become a woman who played for the world. But she'd never forget where it started or the people who'd believed in her when she most needed belief. The engines roared in harmony, and Lily played on, her music weaving through the sound, creating something beautiful and true and entirely her own.